Bolo Yeung, the silent villain of the 90s. In the 1990s, action films didn't begin with explosions. They began with silence, a heavy silence, the kind that made you lean closer to the screen, knowing something brutal was about to happen. And when he appeared, you understood immediately. Words were no longer necessary. Bolo Yeung didn't speak much. He didn't need to. For millions of viewers around the world, his presence alone was enough to signal danger. His body looked carved from stone, his stare cold and unreadable. In an era before CGI muscles and digital violence, Bolo Yeung represented something real, raw physical power and quiet menace. This was the age of VHS tapes, late-night action movies, and fights that felt painfully authentic. And in that golden era of action cinema, one figure stood out as the ultimate silent villain. A body built for fear. Born in Guangzhou and raised in Hong Kong, Bolo Yeung's path to cinema did not begin with acting lessons or dramatic monologues. It began in the gym. He was a competitive bodybuilder long before Hollywood ever noticed him. His physique wasn't just impressive, it was intimidating. Thick neck, massive shoulders, arms that looked more like weapons than limbs. This was not a body designed for romance or comedy. It was a body designed to dominate the screen. Directors quickly realized something important. If Bolo Yeung spoke less, he became even more terrifying. Silence became his signature. While other villains shouted threats or delivered dramatic speeches, Bolo simply stared. And that stare carried more weight than pages of dialogue. It suggested confidence, control, and inevitability. When he entered a scene, the balance of power shifted instantly. You didn't wonder if a fight would happen. You wondered who would survive it. The art of the silent villain. What made Bolo Yeung unforgettable was not just his size, it was restraint. He moved slowly, deliberately. Every step felt calculated. Every punch looked final. His characters rarely wasted energy, rarely showed emotion. They waited. They watched. And when they struck, it was decisive. This created a unique psychological effect on the audience. Silence forced viewers to project their own fear onto him. Without words to explain his intentions, he became something more primal, almost mythic. In Bloodsport, his character Chong Li barely speaks, yet dominates the entire film. His presence overshadows the hero. He doesn't insult, he doesn't boast, he simply breaks people, physically and mentally. That silence made him universal. Language barriers disappeared. Fear required no translation. When action felt real. The 1980s and 1990s were a special time for action cinema. Fights were choreographed, but they were also painful. Actors trained hard. Injuries were real. Sweat wasn't added in post-production. It was earned. Bolo Yeung belonged perfectly to that era. In films like Enter the Dragon, Bloodsport, Double Impact, and TC 2000, his fights felt heavy. You could almost feel the impact through the screen. There were no shaky cameras to hide weakness, no digital effects to enhance strength. When Bolo punched someone, the audience believed it hurt, because it probably did. This realism is what people miss today. Modern action films are faster, louder, and more spectacular, but they often lack weight. Bolo's performances reminded viewers that true intimidation comes from presence, not noise. Why he was always the villain, Bolo. Yeung rarely played the hero, and that was no accident. Heroes speak, villains observe. His physicality naturally placed him opposite the protagonist. He was the obstacle, the final test, the mountain that had to be climbed, and by making him silent, filmmakers turned him into a force of nature rather than a man. He wasn't evil because of ideology. He was dangerous because of capability. This made his villains timeless. They weren't tied to politics, nationality, or complex motivations. They existed purely to challenge the hero's limits. In many ways, Bolo Yeung represented fear itself. Quiet, patient, unstoppable. The end of an era. As cinema evolved, something changed. Digital effects improved. Studios began prioritizing speed over substance. Muscles became optional, enhanced later by computers. Villains talked more, explained more, shouted more. The silent villain slowly disappeared. Bolo Yeung, like many icons of that era, stepped away as the industry moved in a different direction. It wasn't a dramatic exit. No scandal, no tragedy, just time, moving forward. But time has a strange effect on legends. It doesn't erase them, it sharpens them. Why we still remember him. Decades later, clips of Bolo Yeung still circulate online. Reaction videos, nostalgia edits, comments filled with the same sentiment. They don't make villains like this anymore. Younger audiences who never watched VHS tapes or rented movies from small shops discover him for the first time and feel the same tension their parents once felt, because silence never goes out of style. In a world overwhelmed by noise, explanation, and constant dialogue, the image of a silent, powerful antagonist feels refreshing, honest, real. Bolo Yeung didn't need character arcs or emotional monologues. His body told the story. His silence carried the meaning. The silent villain lives on. Bolo Yeung may no longer dominate cinema screens, but his influence remains. Every time a modern film tries to create an intimidating presence through stillness, every time a villain pauses instead of speaking, that legacy echoes quietly. He reminds us of a time when action films trusted the audience, when fear was shown, not explained, when silence was more powerful than words. In the 1990s, if you saw Bolo Yeung on screen, you knew something simple and undeniable. A fight was coming, and it wouldn't be gentle. No words, just power.